someone, somewhere, at some time, was going to build something like this. It could have just as easily been a sword and sorcery fantasy backdrop. Or something of the post-apocalyptic variety, perhaps. We just needed an appetite for risk, enough money, and enough time. CIG is the fortunate group that gets to implement this. They figured out how to raise the large sums of money required, within a framework that affords them the long span of time needed. Chris, obviously, has a tolerance for risk, and more importantly, a vision.
Finally, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone at CIG for working so tirelessly and with so much passion to deliver something that is already special and will only get more so as we continue. And of course, to all of you for making all this possible with your support and feedback. We couldn't do this without all of you, something that I and the team appreciate every day. We are very lucky to be allowed the time and the money to build a game of all of our dreams, something that is only more apparent as the video game business becomes more monolithic.
There's no guarantee they'll pull it off, but one thing we know for certain is they would not be able to pull it off without us. It is precisely because of us that a company such as CIG is able to take such a risk that no AAA studio was ever going to take. Those studios are quite content putting out Part 6 or Part 9 or Part 12 of a franchise they know to generate income. As a result of all of us and ponying up and saying, we want something different, something better, we might just get it a few decades ahead of schedule.
We are one of the few large independents left standing, and there is no way we would be allowed to dream as big as we are on an original game and take the time to achieve that dream if we were part or funded by any of the few remaining mega game companies. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all in the verse this coming year.
Chris's message at the end of CitizenCon Direct 2955 resonated with me for obvious reasons. The video I put out before CitizenCon, titled The First Game for Almost Everyone, received a lot of great feedback, for which I'm very grateful, but as expected, it also received its fair share of criticism. Some of the critiques were constructive, interesting, and thought-provoking, which I am also grateful for and appreciate, but some of it, as expected, because this is the internet, was garbage. From the same people that will likely take to Reddit to criticize CIG's Stargarita machine. I want one. Look, you're free to disagree with where some see the project going, or to debate the nuances of how they're getting there. But make no mistake about it, there's no other route, for the foreseeable future, to a game of this scope and scale. You're either getting on this train or you're getting off. Unfortunately, all the other rides have been canceled. If you're getting off, then you're signing up to enjoy Battlefield 6 and 7 and 8. New World Season 10 maybe, and 11, and 12. Diablo 4, if ARPGs are your thing, and 5, and 6. Or PoE 2, and 3, and 4. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying these games, right? Some of them are going to be good games, and all of them will likely provide some good times. But they're not Star Citizen, and nothing else for the next few decades will be. Chris nailed it on the head when he said, there's no way we'd be allowed to dream as big as we are and take the time to achieve that dream if we were part of or funded by any of the few remaining mega game companies. It's honestly refreshing that he called this out at the end of CitizenCon Direct and ended the whole thing on that note. The gravity of this statement is immense, and I hope it put things in perspective for many of the gamers out there. One topic emerging from recent feedback is that such and such a project is showing a lot of promise comparatively, or this project over here has accomplished so much more in such a short time. Or this project did in 2 years what it took CIG 10 years to do. Bullshit. It's all bullshit. First of all, this is normal. They call this the second mover advantage. Look it up. This might be a learning opportunity for those making such arguments. If you do look it up, you'll read this. The strategic benefit a company gains by entering a market after an initial pioneer, allowing it to reduce costs and risk by learning from the first mover's mistakes. Sound familiar? That's right. First movers and pioneers make more mistakes. Shocking, I know. The problem with this argument and theory is that CIG is still at work. They haven't finished paving the entire path for everybody else. Eventually, these upstarts will find themselves in the same predicament and solving the same problems with the same lack of knowledge as CIG has been. They'll have the same technical and financial hurdles to overcome. How many upstarts have we seen keel over from financial woes? But I'm sure this new one over here they're going to be different. And maybe they will be. I hope they are. But assigning your hope there while belittling the confidence that others have in a far more mature project is a little curious, and it's a funny thing. A tactic that's easy for me to dismiss, because if you did believe in it, then why aren't you there supporting it instead of hovering around this one, hell-bent on tearing it down? One person threw out accusations of hopium, or copium, or whatever the hell folks call it these days. And then they said AI was going to be building games like this for us in a few years. You want to talk about hopium? I call that delusion. AI is not coming to save us. The mega game companies, formerly known as AAA studios, who now produce a lot less A's, they're not coming to save us either. On one hand, you have the current state of the gaming industry, which we're all too familiar with. And on the other hand, you have CIG, who's pioneering an entirely new class of game. And in between, there's certainly some innovation going on in smaller studios on a much smaller scale. They're taking swings. They're smaller swings, but they're swings nonetheless. Studios like Intrepid and Mainframe, just as an example. And that is the state of things. Now, speaking of a new class of game, let's talk about the rest of CitizenCon Direct. And by the way, I've seen some of the comments requesting a technical look into some of the things that they discussed. Thank you for the request. We will get to that and do something along those lines, but I want to keep this video at a higher level. This is just kind of my initial response and thoughts about the whole thing, and then after this we'll do some videos getting into the nitty-gritty. My first question, did anyone sit through the Genesis technology discussion and the demonstrations and think, wow, all this effort and splendor and a massive set of accomplishments, all these breathtaking views and landscapes, just so I could have a better view out the window of my ship? Because if you were thinking that, you haven't been paying attention. I know at one point in the show, Jared referred to spaceships as core to the game, and I will agree, that's true. But where we're headed, I don't know if that'll be the case one day. And nothing validates that more than Genesis. This is a system that weaves together biomes, weather, resource allocation, erosion, vegetation, rock formations, rivers and valleys, and so much more, to literally bring these planets to life. This has to be the culmination of an enormous amount of work, I'm sure. And what we've seen is nothing short of ridiculously impressive, is what I would call it. This isn't the level of effort that you put into something to make it the backdrop for spaceships. This is This is the effort you put into something whenever you want players to live there, to explore, to develop affinities, to build geographic knowledge, to build, to learn, to call a place home, and then to fight for it. I don't see the celestial bodies of Star Citizen as backdrops for making space travel more convincing, but rather as the genesis to everything. A player's first and final destination, core to the experience of being a Star Citizen. Now, of course, we've only seen presentations to date, but that's about to change as the first planets built with this technology come online next month with the introduction of the Nyx system. Speaking of Nyx, I was wrong. I had stated that we would not see Nyx this year. However, me being wrong has a lot to do with CIG's shifting ways of working and delivery strategies. My folly was to assume that CIG would deliver Nyx in a manner similar to which it delivered Pyro. Somewhat of a big bang release with a mostly fleshed out system. And I didn't believe CIG would have the time to accomplish that amidst their other priorities in 2025. So it turns out I was partially correct. It's not a fully fleshed out star system, but they're delivering it anyway. And they're going to iterate on it and improve it and build it out right in front of us. This is a shift in strategy that's quite consistent with the shift that we saw from them from 2024 and going into 2025 as a whole, following the release of 4.0, right? Since that time, we've seen more frequent, albeit smaller, deliveries. It's been a year of rapid iterations. And from the sounds of how Nyx will be rolled out, 2026 is going to be more of that. Of course, and it's been a while since I said this, if you're counting, but everything's a trade-off. There will be pros and cons, just as there were pros and cons to the previous Big Bang approach. In the end, each one of you is going to have varying opinions on it, and nobody will be wrong. In my opinion, this approach makes a lot of sense for something like a star system. It makes much less sense for something like a flight model or engineering. And as we've seen, those systems, CIG is not taking the iterative approach on rolling them out to the universe. And so this gives me additional confidence that, you know, they're being intentional and thoughtful about where to apply this iteration or this iterative approach and processes and where they don't make sense. Because trust me when I say I have seen many organizations that swing that pendulum so far to one side that everything becomes painful. It's critical to be intentional on these things, to employ the right practice at the right time for the right work. And we're seeing that here in action as we're about to watch and compare the rollouts of Nyx to how they approach engineering versus the Genesis technology and so on and so forth. Now, just because the planets and moons of Star Citizen may not always take a backseat to spaceships in Star Citizen, doesn't mean ships aren't critically important in their own right. And few things will have a greater long-term impact on group play in Star Citizen than capital ship combat. Now you may be thinking, they didn't say much about capital ship combat this year. Didn't they? Tactical Strike Groups was revealed as a new gameplay mode coming in mid-2026. It features a large orchestrated instanced combat scenario, which will require a large team and various types of vehicles being well coordinated in order to achieve victory. You're going to need capital ships, fighters, drop ships, and probably a few others. As part of this event, you'll need to deploy fighters, which will take out power generators in order to disable the shields around the anti-capital ship turrets. Your capital ships are not going to be able to get anywhere near these things until they're down, right? So for some parts of this, you'll need missiles or torpedoes. You're also going to need to deploy boots on the ground. It all looks pretty exciting, and I cannot wait to get our org in there, but what really stood out to me is how much this sounded like the capital ship combat as it was discussed in November of last year for the IAE show of 2024. Do you remember?
Today's topic, capital combat, with Rich Tyra, John Crew, and Jared Huckabee. Stay tuned, it's the IAE show, and it starts right now.
How is capital warfare supposed to work? What are we building towards, and why should folks be excited?
You can't just turn up, lob 50 torpedoes at a ship, press the I win button and go on. You've got to remove those defenses layer by layer. So capital ships have multiple defenses. Obviously they have turrets on them for shooting ships. They also have PDCs for disabling closer targets such as missiles and torpedoes. And then they have physicalized shield emitters, which is what you saw in the demo where Cal Mason sort of kites a Vandal ship into it. So you need to take all those things out in progression to stand a chance against a capital ship.
Ultimately, capital ship warfare should be a puzzle that you have to figure out. The reason why we have like an Ares or a Retaliator is to allow you to soften up the capital ship shield so that you can actually then get access to the shield emitters and the PDCs and the weapons that are actually keeping your fighters away. And the way that the shield faces work is that they're underpinned by physicalized shield emitters, which are then connected to the core shield generator, or in large capital ships might have multiple shield generators. And then once you've taken out the PDCs and you've taken down a shield phase, that's when you've got essentially two options. One option will be to board, so you'll be able to then use our hacking gameplay, and then obviously you'll have to fight your way through to the bridge to be able to take over it. Or the other side is then you just, if your mission is to just destroy this ship, if you've taken down those layers of defenses like John says, that's where you then send in the torpedoes. So capital ship gameplay is again planned to utilize all the different roles of the different ships that we've made over the years, and it should be a significant challenge to be able to take out one of those larger ships.
Somehow they've incorporated Vandal capital ship killing turrets. These turrets ignore small fighters, and they have the firepower to destroy even the biggest capital ships.
Your Polaris and your Idris, if you get it close, it will get shredded. The idea of these is so we can sort of make it so we can mix up that ship combat, and not everyone can just bring the biggest ship and win just because they have the biggest ship.
So at this point you're thinking destroy the turrets, but it's not that easy. The power relays.
So the exterior has a number of power relays that are holding the doors closed so that you can't get in.
You have to find them, you have to target them, and you have to destroy them. But it may not be as easy as it seems.
Here's our first wrinkle. The power relays have their own shields that are resistant to energy-based attacks.
We know how much you like using laser repeaters, but so do these guys.
Capital ship can't get close enough because of the turrets.
So ships with explosive or ballistic ordnance will be needed here.
See the resemblance? It's certainly not exactly the same, but there's enough resemblances here that, to me, this feels like a bit of a dry run at the kind of large-scale capital-style combat they're envisioning, and perhaps a creative way to collect metrics and feedback on how it feels. Regardless, I'm looking forward to getting in there and seeing how it feels for myself. And if you're eager to do the same, but you're sitting there recognizing that you're going to need an org to make the most of this type of gameplay, but you don't have one yet, then what are you waiting for? Because Luminous, the org I lead, is recruiting, and we want you. So join up and apply by using the link below or up here. Now, for me, Genesis and the Tactical Strike groups stole the show. These were the headliners in my eyes, but there was plenty of other things to be excited about. They informed us that the Siege of Orison was returning as an instance event. Pretty cool. Now, speaking of instancing, it was mentioned quite a bit at CitizenCon this year. Instancing can be a double-edged sword. especially in a sandbox like this, and I give them credit for addressing this fact head on during the show. That said, I think we can dig into this quite a bit more, and we will, but not in this video. We'll dedicate an upcoming video to this topic specifically. For now, let's just summarize it as, it's clear to me that they understand it's a tool to be wielded carefully and with intention. I don't get the impression they're looking to clobber the open universe with it, but rather they'll be looking to deliver curated experiences with it when it makes sense. This is exactly how they messaged it yesterday. And I believe Siege of Orison is a good candidate for such a thing, especially for testing it out and getting feedback and metrics on how it's performing. I think a lot of groups are going to get a lot of value from an updated and unimpeded Siege of Orison experience. But we'll leave that topic here for now, and we'll dig into it soon, much, much further. Finally, there was news on crafting. It sounds like we're going to get a Tier 0 implementation of crafting on a test branch by the end of this year. This is exciting, even though it's a very limited implementation. This first implementation, it's going to give us a portable crafting bench that can be fed resources. We'll be able to produce FPS gear and weapons from it. And as simple as this first implementation might seem, the enormous impact that it is going to have on the game would be difficult to overstate. For the first time, we will have some amount of connective tissue between many of the game loops. We're going to be seeing the first strands of tissue from mining and salvage to FPS gearing and combat. Now this goes back to some of the statements I made in my last Star Citizen video that I dropped, in which I lamented about the leverage that we're going to feel as systems are delivered in a broad scope game such as this, where one fairly small feature will create an impact that ripples across other systems in the game. It's going to be an exciting time to be in the verse. I expect to see more trade happening in chat as the purpose around resource extraction rises and people begin experimenting with the impact of custom-made weapons and armor. It's finally giving us a reason to do things, right? That's been one of the biggest long-running complaints, valid complaints in the community. Valid in that we're all craving it, not valid in like that the state of the game is currently unreasonable. Like, we signed up for this, right? But it's valid to be hungry for this. And I have personally been hungry for this for a long time. I've talked about this quite extensively. So I'm super excited for this Tier 0 implementation of crafting. Now, one thing that was not addressed in the show was whether materials that will need to be fed into these crafting benches will need to be refined first. And I don't think they covered this. It would seem obvious to me that it would need to be refined, but it was not explicitly called out. But with the recent updates from CIG telling us that, salvage gameplay changes are coming and that refinement will be entering that loop, it had me immediately wondering if we can bring our crafting bench with us so that we could use resources on the go, but all the resources must be refined first. Is this an indicator that refining platforms are on their way? Will we see the first refining platform alongside the delivery of the crafting Tier 0 into the PU? I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. What are your thoughts? Do you think we'll see a refining platform? If so, which one? Now, overall, I felt there was a lot more packed into the 2 hours that we got this year than I was expecting. There were a few surprises, for sure, like the crafting bit and the tactical strike bit. The one thing I was hoping to get more information on that we didn't hear was more about base building. As you know, I have been clamoring for that for forever, so any little crumb, I'm like, scouring for. Now, that said, they provided so much detail on base building last year that it made sense to me that we wouldn't have much more to share this year. I'm sure they're still executing. It's just a matter of time at this point, and if not much about the plan has changed, then it would be pretty repetitive to repeat much of it. Kind of like the 1.0 plan itself, right? When they checked in on that, and Rich was like, well, not much has changed. We're just further along, and, you know, that was about what I expected if we got any kind of a 1.0 roadmap check-in. What else can you say? We're already seeing the progress, and the things that we can't see the progress on, like dynamic server meshing, they just had a huge Star Citizen Live discussion, right, dedicated to that. It was, you know, we covered it here. It was like 4 hours long or something. So we're a very well-informed bunch on that stuff now. I'm most excited to land on a Genesis world. Above all else, that's what I'm really looking forward to. And to see that tech come back and reshape the face of the planets in the Stanton system and so forth. It's gonna be wild. How about you? What are you looking for the most? What's your thoughts on any of this? Did the show surprise you in any way? Was there something unexpected for you, or something you felt was missing, perhaps? How are you feeling about 2026 coming out of this show? I look forward to discussing all of this and more in the comments below. Until then, Grolo out.